Hello and welcome to the Green River Media Election Center, Your Voice 2026. My name is Broden Woodruff, and today I'm joined with Vincent Thompson, who is running for U.S. Senate on the Democratic ticket. So, starting off, you are one of seven candidates running in the Democratic primary, and you're working to replace Senator Mitch McConnell. Would you mind telling us more about your background and some more about yourself?
I'm a farmer. I live in a little town called Brineyville, which is in Hardin County, about 15 minutes west of Elizabethtown. Raised beef, cattle, and goats. I was telling y'all I've got that property that's formerly Catholic girls' school that people like to come get scared in, so we rent that out of the venue. But my reason I'm running for a political this position is my wife passed away in 2020. She had been diagnosed with congestive heart failure in 2015 thereabouts, and through the long process, she needed to have a heart transplant, and we were at Jewish hospital. They're doing great, but then there was a lot of pressure from different realms of governments that were uh, making that hospital no longer viable. And her doctor's time told her she needed to go to Vanderbilt to get a heart transplant. And because she was a teacher, but she was on disability, her insurance required her to go to the state hospital. So they pretty much overruled the doctor's explicit instructions. And nothing wrong with the UK. They did a great job. But that happened to be January of 2020, and then March 2020 hit, and everybody was already running on fumes, and it just continued that way throughout the year. And she made it through a whole lot of surgery and things like that, but she ended up passing away October the 11th, 2020, and somehow she contracted E. coli, lost lower part of her right lung. She fought as hard as she could fight, and it just didn't work out. So I really put insurance on the hot seat for interfering with healthcare, and that's my primary campaign platform. Is I'm going to get insurance out of healthcare, and healthcare is between the doctor and the patient or the nurse. Middlemen, insurance have no reason to be in that realm.
Following that, what are some things that you've noticed in your community or in Hardin County that you'd hope to shed some light on?
I'm the chairman of the Hardin County Conservation District. People that don't know, the conservation district was founded after the Dust Bowl, and the goal was to make sure we didn't have a repeat of all the erosion and dirt displacement we had from Oklahoma all across the southeast. And I've taken that job pretty seriously. Of course, we were also soil and water conservation. So Kentucky being a karst system, we have one of the most precious and easily infiltrated systems of water in probably the world. And that's been the goal of mine, to make sure that we protect those resources. And that's probably as close to home as you can get. Like I said, I'm a farmer, raise beef, cattle, and goats. So the land is important to me. Water supply and take care of constituents.
Moving on to congressional integrity and reform, throughout the country, one of the most campaigned promises from many candidates and a huge issue on voters' minds are term limits. What is your stance on a bill that aims to limit the number of terms a person can serve in Congress? Would you vote in favor or against?
So I'm in favor of term limits. I'm not so sure. You hear a lot of numbers thrown around. I'm worried with the two-term limit position dealing with federal government. So you can go in there and be a minority party and have no real power, and that can last for at minimum probably 3 years, and Senate up to 6 years, or it could be even 12 years. So if you're hindering somebody by two term limits, how much are you going to get accomplished? Now, I'm not saying that we shouldn't have some type of term limits, but I'm not sure where that number is. But I would be for term limits of some standard.
Moving on to healthcare and reproductive rights, the high cost of adequate healthcare is another major thing on voters' minds right now. What specific policies would you work to implement as senator to drive those prices down for your constituents?
So, like my primary platform with the insurance out of healthcare, we are already spending as a nation about $8,500 of our own individual taxpayer money for healthcare. The problem is we have insurance companies who are for-profit motor companies, and they are adding a middle layer, a middleman, if you want to call them that, of about $4,000 per individual. And we already we could be solvent right now, and people could have basic standard healthcare. That's not going to include your, more obscure problems, but they can be handled and addressed as needed. But our standard healthcare, we're already paying the amount that we should be paying. Problem is, we're paying 50% or 100, up to 150% of what we should be paying. So I feel like any policy that's going to get that across, I'm going to be for that. Medicare for all, that's where I've learned all this from. They've got the numbers together, they got the bills ready to go. It's just a matter of getting people that are going to support them.
Many people are worried about the future of IVF in this country and the ability to grow their families through science. Do you believe Kentucky should pass a law that specifically protects IVF and the families who use them?
So again, this kind of ties back into my point of healthcare should be between the healthcare provider and the patient. We don't need insurance involved with it. We don't need legislators involved with it. If a doctor says that IVF is a suitable, a patient is a candidate for IVF, I feel like that should move forward. And I feel like insurance should accommodate them and work around ways to do that. Any policy that I would need to put in place to get that core principle across that healthcare should be between the doctor or the nurse and the patient, I'm for that. And I feel like that would include IVF, that would include, any type of pro-choice issues. That's between the doctor and the patient. It's not my business as a senator to dictate those terms to somebody because I don't live a particular situation. The doctor should know that patient. If they don't, they're also going to have more fees in that area than I ever will.
Moving on, with the McConnell seat now open for the first time in over 40 years, what is your strategy to flip the seat from red to blue?
So my plan from the get-go has been get out there. I've been at 84 counties now as of today, and I've talked to people where they are with the issues they have on hand. I've never made it about any party or partisan politics when I discuss them. I've been to events that are solely Democrat. I've been to events that are predominantly Republican because Democrats are not showing up to anymore. It's that cross the aisle ability that I have that I've learned through the Soil and Water Conservation District because it's a nonpartisan position, that one I have. I've worked with Republicans across the entire state and even the nation to get policies across when there's a middle ground, a connective tissue of policy that they need to get accomplished. And I feel like I can bring that same leadership style to this position.
Similar question in a sense, but what is one thing about your platform that distinguishes you from other Democratic candidates?
Um, well, I didn't realize this at the start, but I'm definitely an unusual candidate. Um, I didn't realize I was doing this. This is kind of how I approach everything that I've done with my life. But I went into one of my first debates, and people were asking me questions, and I said I don't know, which I learned that most politicians are trained to, answer the question just enough, but then divert to something they do know about. Whereas my goal has been, if you're asking that question, you probably have a little bit of expertise on that question. So I'm going to say, I'm not confident for my answer. What do you think I should do? And then I'm going to find other people. I'm going to work on the recommendation that you have. I feel like the only way that we can kind of get everything back on the rails is to have many different conversations, especially with people that aren't really thinking alike, but you can hear good policy if you're willing to look and listen.
Circling back a little bit, you mentioned that this is your 84th county?
Yes, 84th County.
Have you been to Greene County before?
I have in the past, but I've not been here for my campaign. This has been my chance, and I take every opportunity like I'm here. I got here about a half an hour early, was talking with the bartender, some of the people that were outside. I'm just speaking. It's not like I'm speaking to just the elites. It's not like I'm just speaking to people that might have the same background, same issues that I have. It's about who I meet and just working with the conversation they're bringing to the table, finding out what's important to them. That's been my goal since day one of my campaign, is to make sure that people know their voice is heard, regardless of what affiliation they have or what problems they might have. It's everybody deserves that chance. A senator is supposed to represent, I think there's about 7 million people in Kentucky, and it's the job of the senator, no matter whether they're Republican or Democrat or an independent, to represent every person to the best of their abilities. I try to exercise that from the ground up.
Moving on, with the ongoing conflict between Israel and Palestine, do you support the idea of sending money and other forms of support to Israel?
So Israel is it's a touchy issue for sure because we know what's happening, and we've always had Israel as a partner in the Middle East. Now, as far as dealing with, offensive weapons, I'm not really on board for that because they're showing that they're not really being good stewards of our money in that regard. But as far as defensive measures go, this is a population that is nestled in a very hostile region to their religion and to their people. I don't feel like we can abandon them wholeheartedly, but it does need to be reevaluated on how we are going to provide them the things and how they're going to respond to those things. I think they've been kind of given a blank check on what to do with it, and I think that does definitely need to be reined in. As far as the issues with Palestine, it's not everybody can see what it actually is, and there's no defending it. The only way to do it is try to reel it back in as best we can and protect them, Israel, as we can, while making sure that they are not becoming one of the things that we were going to fight against for years.
Mm-hmm. With the recent headlines of the ongoing war/military operations occurring in Iran, what are your thoughts on the escalations that are happening in the Middle East?
So, the biggest problem with Iran is we did not do something about it years ago. And the fact that it was done now, it's proven to be impulsive, has no clear strategy on how to deal with it. From outside appearances, from my personal opinion, it looks like they felt like they were going to have another in and out situation like they had in Venezuela. And that just shows the incompetence not only of the administration, but the people surrounding the administration. They're either giving advice or their advice is being ignored by our commander in chief. If we had anybody in Congress that was willing to stand up for it, this is supposed to be in their wheelhouse to take care of declarations of war. And I know they've got semantics that they get around it, but this has been essentially a declaration of war, and it's also impacted. I think they're responsible for how much 80% of our crude oil that comes through there, something like that, plus all other refined goods, fertilizer, which I'm a farmer and that affects us. And yeah, it was just a very impulsive decision from all optics that I can see. Maybe there's a long term plan, but I think the long term plan was the fact that they knew that energy was going to go up, so they decided to invest in oil and other energy and just make some more money because that seems to be what this administration is more focused about is lining their own pocket rather than taking care of the American public.
Finally, is there anything you'd like to share with your fellow Kentuckians? Quotes, slogans, some words of advice, or even where people can find more information about your campaign?
So my campaign is all available online. I've pretty much done everything through Facebook, but I do have a TikTok account, and my Facebook is Vincent Thopmson for U.S. Senate. My TikTok is Guitar Picking Vincent because I was trying to do something that would be mutually beneficial for both my campaign and then before and after my campaign if I should be having a personal one. But yeah, I've shared pretty much every video that people have shared of me speaking before events. I've done some small short writing essays that I put on there about things that are going on. And then I've shared some of my stories of being on the road and traveling the state and playing my guitar. A lot of people I've sang my old Kentucky home a lot of times when I'm at an event, and people seem to like hearing that because I sing it and play it, and it's something people forget behind. Music is pretty much a universal binder, so it kind of softens the initial inset of political discourse because we're also one side or the other these days. It's makes it kind of hard to have a rational conversation.
Well, with that being said, it seems like we have reached the end of today's episode of Your Voice. I'm Broden Woodruff, and this is Vincent Thompson. For more information on the 2026 election, check out our website, greenrivermedia.org/election. Thank you so much for joining us. And before we end this show, I would like to thank Long Hunter's Coffee and the Tavern on the Square here in Greensburg for allowing us to film here today. And they are just some wonderful staff, wonderful food, wonderful drinks. If you ever come here, I recommend getting a Dirty Dr. Pepper. It's really good. But that is all we have for our show today. Thank you so much for joining us, and take care.
Thank y'all.